Thank you. Shall we talk about illusion? Thank you. I see a rabbit. Or is it a duck? Królek, utka. Enter. Ganeshan. Shall we have a shout out for duck, for enter? I'm sorry, more of you see the duck than that. I'm sure of that one. Is it a rabbit? Is it a duck? What do you see? Rabbit. Utka. So we're back to the illusion of the utka, or the enter, or the duck, or the rabbit. Well, I don't know the answer to that one. But what I do know is that how we see affects what we see. But what I also want to do today is, tonight, I want to talk about mosaics and illusion. So yes, so I want to talk actually about these little guys, mosaics, tesserae, if I may. Whoops, I think I hit the bell. Because mosaics play all sorts of illusions on us. You can't actually blend color, you build color. Or conversely, what you do to build an image is that you break it down into its constituent parts. That's Bjork. But what I really want to do is to introduce you to the Digital Apamea project. And I am somewhat indebted to Bjork because of the Bjork Digital exhibition that I saw several years ago in London. And then I realized that there were indeed different ways to see. But I'm not talking about music, I'm talking about mosaics. And specifically, I am talking about a 4th century Byzantine synagogue in Syria and its mosaics. So if I tell you a bit about the town of Apamea, 3 basic facts about Apamea. Apamea is located very close to Homs, which you see on the screen, and it is due south of Aleppo. It's actually 2 cities. It's divided between an upper city, a tell, a citadel, which you see on the left-hand side, Kalat al-Mudik, from which the modern town takes its name, and a Roman Hellenistic settlement in the plain. However, history has not been very kind, because today Apamea remains, from what I have been told, the most affected site in all of Syria in terms of illegal excavation and looting. And if I just show you here on the left-hand side, this is before the Syrian conflict. And this is shortly after the Syrian conflict took effect, with hundreds of thousands of potholes. The genesis of Syria, the genesis of Apamea is typically associated with Seleucus, one of the generals of Alexander the Great, and his attempt to militarize the city around 312 BC, excuse me. And his attempts to militarize the city also included elephants. In fact, 500 war elephants, or thereabouts. And I mean, if you look carefully at these coins, you can actually see, well, if I point out to you, it says Basileus, the ruler, up at the top. And then here it indicates Seleucus, and here again, Seleucus. And with this particular one, you can actually see the chariot as well. So these are indeed war elephants. The site of Apamea has been extensively excavated by the Belgian authorities for the best part of 80 years. And in the fourth campaign, the Belgian authorities discovered the remains, the foundations, and the mosaic floor of a 4th century synagogue at Apamea. Now, what's really interesting about the synagogue is also that it was found intertwined in the foundations of 2 latter basilica. And the donation inscriptions, as you can see, indicate not only the date of the foundation of the synagogue of 391, but they also indicate the amount that the benefactors donated to the synagogue. And what you see here is actually female donation inscriptions. Females make up about 50% of all the donation inscriptions. And you can actually see here that Alessandra donated 100 feet of mosaic. And this one here, Ambrosia, she donated 50. And then again, we have 100 here. That's a row. And then 100 and 100. So we can see that Diogenes also gave 100 feet of mosaics to the synagogue. And the other thing, of course, is that the mosaics were incredibly well preserved, being buried underneath 15 centimeters of the latter ecclesiastical structure. Now, all of the evidence points to the deliberate destruction of the synagogue at a time when Roman tolerance yielded to Byzantine intolerance. And we actually find that phenomenon in lots of other synagogues at that time in the 5th century. Why am I still wearing these pink glasses? I didn't realize that until, well, I see a bit better now. The early excavators sliced and diced the mosaics. They lifted them, they cut them, and they brought them back to Syria, to Damascus, and they brought them also to Brussels. And here you can see a cross-section of the actual floor, but they only left the tessellated layer at the top. And one of the other things that the early excavators did, part of their legacy, was that they embedded the mosaics in concrete. And one of the problems, I mean, I hardly need to tell a room of scientists this, but I mean, when you embed something in reinforced concrete, that when the concrete gets wet, it expands, it contracts, and then the tessellated layer breaks, as you can see here. The other thing is that they hung them on the wall. And these were never designed to be hung on the wall. It was an ambulatory experience. So what you're actually finding is actually erasure, because as we know from classical sources, this was a social exercise to build a mosaic. You had different people. It was highly stratified, the production. You had different people building the different layers of the mosaics and being differently rewarded as well. We know, for example, that the individual who built who leveled the bottom layer was paid between 50 and 60 sesterces a day. And the Pictor Imaginarius, who designed the cartoon, was paid 175 a day. So that by hacking all of that off, you're hacking off all of that social history as well. The project took me to Ravenna, to a school where they still practice the tradition. It also took me to Jordan, to Madaba, where the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem and Caritas Jordan have a project to rehabilitate Iraqi refugees as mosaicists. And eventually, with the photographs and the measurements I had, I stitched the floor together, as you see. But there was still one question, and I'm sure for many of you in the audience, I don't think the Wortspiel works in German, it clearly doesn't. When is a door not a door? When it is a jar? Auf German, auf Deutsch. So when is a floor not a floor? When it's on a wall. So that led me to 3D technology to recreate the floor and the experience of walking upon it. But don't take my word for it. Take hers.
It's 10 minutes, man. I think it's 10 minutes. There you go. All right.